Australian as they come, that's Holden.
Holden, you in my Holden. Life is simply divine. All the world is fair. I'm a millionaire. On the road ahead, there's a happy sign. Holden, you in my Holden. You were meant to be mine. We will have a wedding, no regretting, baby, ain't that fine? Now we can't expect all sunny weather, troubles come, my dear, but as long as we're to travel together, we'll take them all in top gear. Holden, you in my Holden.
Lions, Episode 51, G.M.H, November 1945. The General's house, as it is nicknamed by the workers, is undergoing a huge transformation in readiness for the post-war production. The bulk of the work will be carried out during the brief but well-earned Christmas break. Colin and Jim at the new canteen.
Well, Vic, it looks as though the General's house has really changed.
Yeah, Cole. We look as though we're going to see the men returning here and the women and war workers leaving as the men come in.
Yes, I suppose that's true.
Hey, Cole, speaking of the women's war workers, hadn't you start to make a move on that Sheila you had your eye on a few months ago?
You reckon?
Yeah, mate, before they all go.
You might be right. I've not seen them in a month. I believe they may be in the foundry.
Molly Mitchell's cottage, Cockatoo.
Welcome home, son. I am so glad you made it.
I am so happy to see you. I prayed to Lord Jesus every night for you.
Thanks, love. That is really kind of you. Don't worry, I prayed a lot to get through. One thing I learnt early, there is no such thing as atheists in foxholes and trenches.
I can certainly confirm that, my boy. The Battle of the Somme soon sorted that out.
Yes, Dad. Why don't we splurge our ration tickets a little bit and have tea at the pub for tonight?
All right, everyone. Let's.
Coyle's house, tea time.
Good evening, Colin. Tea will be on the table shortly.
Good evening, Mother. Uncle Fred.
Good evening, Colin. How are you going at work?
Very busy, Uncle Fred. The factory is being rejigged to produce all sorts of things, including floor polishers and, as you know, CKD of Roots Group cars. However, we are gearing up over the Christmas break to make cars again.
It sounds as if you're going to be very busy indeed.
That is for sure, Mother.
Here is the news. 4 dead in Palestine terror raids. Railway cut in 50 places. From Australian Associated Press, London. 4 persons were killed and 10 injured in a series of attacks by Jewish terrorists early yesterday morning on railways throughout Palestine. Those killed include a British soldier and a Palestine policeman. Railways were cut at 50 places. A violent explosion at midnight damaged the parcels office at Jerusalem railway station. Reuters correspondent says the explosion was caused by a time bomb which apparently was set through the railway parcel service and was timed to explode simultaneously with other parcel bombs at Haifa and elsewhere throughout the country. Another heavy explosion occurred in the early hours at Consolidated Refineries. A body was found beneath the rubble. One of the heaviest attacks on railway installations was made at Leida Station and Signal Box. A train and 3 locomotives were badly damaged. The engine shed was set on fire and engines in the yard were mined. 5 armed Jews were arrested after a train had been held up between Jerusalem and Leida by armed uniformed men. Police tracked down a number of men and captured them after a gun duel. 438 men from 6th Division going to Japan. 2 companies and battalion headquarters of 67th Australian Infantry Battalion, which will be part of the British Commonwealth Occupation Force in Japan, has been formed in the Wewak area from 6th Division volunteers. They number 431 other ranks and 17 officers, and expect to embark today for Morotai, where the rest of the unit will be made up of personnel from other areas. And now to local news. Well clad and wealthy, but in danger of death. Somewhere in the Grafton Hills of New South Wales, there is a kangaroo wearing a man's waistcoat with a £5 note in one of the pockets. 2 days ago, Mr. William Thompson, a Grafton farmer, found a kangaroo caught in a wire fence on his property. Acting on a sudden impulse, he removed his old waistcoat and placed it firmly on the kangaroo. He then released the kangaroo, which bounded away wearing the waistcoat. About 3 hours later, Mr. Thompson remembered with horror that there was a £5 note in one of the pockets of his waistcoat. Ever since then, he and his friends have been scouring the countryside for the kangaroo, who unexpected accession to wealth and sartorial splendour has placed it in terrible danger of sudden death. That was the news. There is bound to be more news at 11 p.m.
Oh my goodness! If they are bound to bring the 11 p.m. news on time, they had better hop to it.
Oh, Bobby, they had better get it right, or the news director will be hot on their tails.
He and his friends will have to find it soon, or the household will be poor for a fortnight.
On a more serious note, it is a serious situation in the Middle East.
Yes, Mother, it is. I thought it was a possible problem when the Zionists started arriving by ship.
Why are the Jewish settlers resorting to acts of terrorism?
Well, it's not exactly the Jewish settlers, Uncle Fred. It was a Jewish gang from New York called the Stern Gang that arrived in the Middle East around 1941, as I recall. And they were the ones that started doing things like blowing up railway lines, post offices, police stations, boarding buses dressed as Arab women and blowing them up, that sort of thing. And they've been the ones chiefly who introduced terrorism into the Middle East. The Jewish settlers and the Arabs in Palestine were getting along just fine prior to the arrival of the Stern Gang.
Changing the subject, how long do you get off for Christmas?
G.M.H. January 1946. Colin has been called into the personnel office.
Good morning, Cole. How was your break? Welcomed and relaxing. How about you, Jack? In a word, intense. We haven't stopped. Anyway, Cole, as you may have observed, your job no longer exists anymore. My job is to find a position for everyone. There are only 2 places left for you, Cole, the wood mill or the foundry. I don't think you'll like the latter. All right, Jack, I'll take the wood mill. Okay, Cole. See you around. Good afternoon, Cole. What brings you here? I'm sorry, Jack, but I can't stand the din of that place. I think I'll have to go to the foundry. Okay, Cole. I'll fix things. You should have an early lunch and report to the foreman in the foundry. I'll have sorted things out by the time you get there. Thanks, Jack.
Coyle's house, tea time.
Good evening, Colin. How was your day?
Good evening, Mother. Uncle Fred not here tonight?
No, not tonight. He will be over tomorrow instead.
To answer your question, Mother, I got to work only to find my section was no longer there.
What happened?
The section was removed over Christmas and I started today at the foundry.
I thought you avoided that job.
Yes, I did, but it was unavoidable this time.
Could you turn up the radio, please?
Yes, of course.
Here is the news. Royal Party leaves for Tasmania Monday. The Governor-General and the Duchess of Gloucester, with their children, Prince William and Prince Richard, will sail to Tasmania on Monday for a brief holiday. They will travel in the battleship King George V, which is cruising in Tasmanian waters. The battleship will also carry 2,000 cases of food for Britain, provided through the Sydney Lord Mayor's Food for Britain Fund. The Royal Party is due to land at Hobart on Wednesday evening and will stay at Devonport until February 14. Since they arrived in Australia not quite a year ago, the Duke and Duchess have travelled 39,000 miles and 3,500,000 Australians have seen them. Jap Admiral on trial. Rear Admiral Hamanaka, who with Baron Takasaki is accused of having ordered the execution of 2 Australian POWs, taking the oath during his trial at Morata. The executions were carried out near Menadoo, North Celebes, on June 19, 1945. That was the news. More news at 11 p.m. G.M.H. Foundry.
Ah, good morning, Vic. I see you made it here too.
Yeah, Carl. I did, but I'm afraid it might not be for much longer.
Why?
I have been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. The doctor thinks that my tremors will get worse as time goes on.
Oh, that's no good, mate. That'll mean you'll have to quit here sooner or later. Preferably later.
Yes, mate. It seems so.
One good thing, I've spotted those 2 girls we saw in the new canteen. It looks as though they are still first-class call makers.
Cole, you had better get a move on with one of them because as soon as the men arrive back, they will be replaced.
Yeah, mate. You don't have to tell me twice. I'll be going over to ask the short one out.
Good job and good luck.
Australian as they come, that's Holden.
Holden, you in my Holden. Life is simply divine. All the world is fair. I'm a millionaire on the road ahead. There's a happy sign. Holden, you in my Holden. You were meant to be mine. We will have a wedding, no regretting, baby, ain't that fine? Now we can't expect all sunny weather, troubles come, my dear, but as long as we're to travel Give